this is a dip pen. It's supposed to make your art look like this, but when I tried it, it looked like... Up until now, for inking, I only use multiliners. They are super easy to use, you take the cap off, draw your lines and move on with your day. Simple as that. But with this, it's different. Every manga artist uses this thing. So, I made a decision. I'm going to give myself 7 days to learn how to use a dip pen. And also, I can't use multiliners for the next 7 days. Just this pen, ink and whatever mess I can survive. I have no idea how this is gonna go, but I'm gonna try. Okay, so, for day 1 I didn't have a plan. I literally just wanted to see what using dip pen felt like. I've never used one before, ever. Since I'm a complete beginner, I got myself 2 different nib holders and 2 types of nibs. The G nib labeled 004 and another one labeled 003. I bought 3 of each. Not because I'm fancy, but because I assumed I probably ruined one within the first 10 minutes. Which honestly wasn't too far off. Also, I heard G nibs are great for manga lines and give you a nice line variation, so I figured I'd give it a try. But anyway, I opened the ink, grabbed the dip pen and immediately realized I had no idea what I was doing. Like, how far do you dip it? Do I wipe the ink off? Am I even holding this right? I know people say just try and feel it, but honestly, I was already intimidated before I even touched the paper. Eventually, I gathered courage to try it on paper and it was actually better than I expected. So for a while, I messed around. I wasn't trying to draw anything, I was just testing, scribbling lines, curves, pressure changes, random shapes, trying to see how this thing actually behaves. And that's when I noticed something kinda cool. G-nib reacts... Wow. The G-nib reacts how hard you press. If you press lightly, it gives you a thin line. But when you press down more, the nib spreads and the line gets thicker. I didn't know that going in, but the more I play with it, the more I could feel that variation. It actually feels really nice. On the other hand, the 003 nib was totally different. It was thinner, more consistent and honestly kinda safer, but also a little boring compared to the G nib. It felt more like a regular pen, just more annoying to use. At that point, I knew the G nib was gonna be my main one for this challenge. It's a little wild, but it gives the kind of line variation you see in actual manga. Of course, I still made a complete mess. My fingers were covered in ink, I smudged the page like 10 times. But honestly, I had a good time. I didn't draw anything amazing, but I started to understand how the tool behaves, what pressure works and what angles to avoid. It was frustrating, but also super satisfying when things did go right. After surviving the chaos of day 1, I decided to do something a little more structured today, which for me just meant actually trying to draw something that looked like an actual character. The goal wasn't to ink anything yet, I just wanted to create a bunch of pencil sketches that I could come back to tomorrow. Something to practice on with the dip pen without having to worry about fighting everything out at once. So I spent the day sketching faces, poses, expressions, a couple of characters I've drawn before, and a few that I really wanted to draw. Nothing super detailed, just clean enough that I could follow the lines later with ink. It was kind of nice. After how unpredictable the pen felt yesterday, going back to pencil felt like coming home. I didn't have to fight the tool, I could just draw. But I also started thinking more intentionally while sketching, like, okay, would this line be hard to ink? Or would this pose be too much of a nightmare with the G-nib? I found myself thinking ahead more than usual, trying to keep the line work a little simpler for the inking. I wanted to give myself a variety of stuff to struggle with tomorrow. I even threw a dramatic close-up panel from One Piece for fun, just to see how far I can push it. By the end of it, I had a solid page full of sketches, along with 3 separate drawings ready to be destroyed by ink tomorrow. Today is the day I finally start inking the characters I sketched yesterday, and I was kind of excited. I thought, okay, I've got the sketches done and I kind of understand how the dip pen works now. I was low-key expecting chaos, but it wasn't that bad. Nothing exploded, the ink didn't splatter, the nib didn't snap in half, so technically everything worked. The G-nib started making sense to me. I could feel it responding to the pressure better than before. If I kept my hand steady and moved it with kind of flow, the lines came out clean, with just enough variation to look cool. There were a few small ink splatters, sure, but I'm happy with that. After finishing the first drawing, I looked at it and thought, wait, did I actually just do that? So I kept going. I picked another sketch, this one had more detail, and I just took my time with it. The more I inked, the more I started to enjoy the process. There's something really satisfying about the way that ink moves across the paper when everything's working. It's still not easy, I still have to stay focused the whole time, but it felt less like I was fighting the pen and more like I was working with it. And yeah, it wasn't perfect. Some lines came out a little shaky. I still got a bit nervous around the eyes because of one wrong stroke there and the whole face looks off. But overall, I felt way more in control than I expected. By the end of this session, I had full page inked and it looked alright. Like if I posted them online, I wouldn't feel embarrassed, and that's saying a lot. Day 3 was kind of a turning point. I'm still figuring things out, but it finally feels like I'm starting to connect with the tool, and the dip pen isn't as scary as it was before. I thought today would be frustrating, but it ended up being really nice, and I'm really excited to see what happens tomorrow. The day's mission is shading, specifically manga-style shading. Hatching, cross-hatching, and solid blacks. After yesterday, where my lines looked alright but also lifeless, I wanted to figure out how to give them more depth, and in manga, that mostly comes from how you handle your shadows. So today was all about seeing what the dip pen could actually do beyond just outlining stuff. But this time I decided not to use the G nib. Instead, I'm gonna use the 003 nib. Unlike the G nib, this one gives me consistent line weight no matter how much pressure I apply, and that felt way safer for shading. I started with some basic hatching, just parallel lines under the chin and a bit on the neck. At first I was super stiff, trying to space everything evenly, but it didn't look like I was expecting. Some of the lines were too far apart, others stacked too close, and a few of them curved when they weren't supposed to. But even though it wasn't perfect, it started to look better. The drawing actually felt like a manga panel. Just adding a few shadows instantly made everything more believable. It gave the character weight and mood. It wasn't just a flat face anymore. So then I tried some cross-hatching just to see how different would it be. That got chaotic real fast. It's one thing to draw a clean line, it's another to draw another clean line directly over it going the opposite direction without making a mess. My brain kind of melded for a second, trying to keep it all consistent. Still, even the messier parts looked more dramatic than before, and I started to understand why artists lean to this stuff so much. I also tried filling in some solid blacks, which surprisingly I really enjoyed. It's kind of satisfying to just color the whole section in black. There is no stress about line thickness or angle. But there is one big downside when using ink: drying time. I smudged at least 2 spots by accident. I just moved my hand slightly too fast and boom! Every time I thought something was dry, it wasn't. Still, it felt like progress. The 003 nib made it way easier to focus on technique instead of babysitting the pen the whole time. I could just draw without overthinking, and yeah, some of the shading looked a bit rushed, and some of it was, let's say, questionable at best. But I started to feel it. The idea behind manga shading started to make sense. So yeah, day 4 felt really good. Way less stressful, way more structured, and I'm still figuring things out, but using the 003 nib for shading was definitely the right call. And now I kinda want to try building a full panel from scratch, line work, shading, backgrounds, the whole thing, but not yet. There is one more thing I need to try before that. It's day 5 and today I decided to finally try drawing my own manga style character. I'm not gonna lie, I felt a little weird about it. Suddenly I wasn't just practicing lines or doing a face here and there, it was actually creating something. Trying to make something that looks like it could exist inside a manga. That's a lot of pressure when I'm only been using dip pen for a few days. And since I've been reading a lot of One Piece recently, I figured, why not let that influence the design a little? I didn't have a super detailed plan, but I knew I wanted the character to have that energy One Piece characters have. I started with a sketch and this part felt good. I wasn't overthinking it too much. I gave the character clothes, hair, expression, some scars, some weird accessories that don't make sense but somehow still do, and then came the inking. I used the G-nib again because I wanted those nice thick lines. And yeah, the first few lines were shaky and I definitely had to remind myself not to death grip the pen, but once I got into the rhythm, I started to feel okay. Not perfect, definitely not, but way better than it did a few days ago. There were still some lines that came out too thick or too light, but overall the characters started to come together. It looked legit, not amazing, but not embarrassing either. After the line work, I grabbed the 003 nib to add shading. That part took longer than I thought. I was really trying to be careful, placing hatching under the chin and in the folds of the clothes. By the end, I sat back and looked at the drawing and I was like, okay, yeah, this actually kind of works. It's not perfect, but it feels like something. It has that manga energy. Day 5 was probably the most satisfying so far. It felt like all the messy little attempts and awkward lines from the past few days actually led to something. I still have a long way to go, but now I feel like maybe I can actually pull this off. For the final part of this challenge, I decided to combine the last 2 days and try to draw a full manga panel. A real panel, character, action, emotion, everything. I wanted to redraw that Zoro scene from One Piece, you know, the one nothing happened, but instead of Zoro, I'm gonna do this character I drew. The nothing happened is probably the most powerful scene in One Piece for me, and I didn't want to just draw something cool for the final day. I wanted to draw something that meant something. Something that reminded me why I love manga in the first place. There is just something about Zoro in this scene. He's gone through hell, and he still says nothing. He doesn't ask for credit. He doesn't even explain anything. He just carries it. And I think that's why I wanted to end on this. This whole week, learning the dip pen, messing up, trying again, it kind of mirrors that mindset. Just showing up, taking the hit, just doing the work. And when I finished the drawing, it wasn't about whether it looked perfect or not. It was about what it felt like. And for me, it felt right. 7 days of learning manga art. 7 days of messing up and trying again anyway. When I started this, I really didn't know what to expect. There were a lot of moments this week where I wanted to stop, not because I hated it, but because I just didn't feel like I was getting anywhere. I kept comparing myself to artists who've been doing this for years and wondering if I was just wasting my time. But every day I was getting better. Not drastically, but I still improved so much with ink and dip pens. And the Zoro panel I did was my way of saying thank you to this whole process. Did I master manga art in a week? Absolutely not. But I learned so much about lines, inking, manga in general, and most importantly, how to use the dip pen. So if you've been watching this, whether you're an artist or not, thank you, seriously. It means a lot. This challenge pushed me way outside of my comfort zone, and I'm glad I stuck with it. If anything here made you want to start drawing or try something new, do it. Don't wait until you're ready, just start. If you want to see me do more art videos like this, you know what to do. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.